This week is double parsha, Parshas Behar Bechukatai. And Behar begins with two mitzvahs. The mitzvah of Shemitah and the mitzvah of Yovel. The mitzvah of Shemitah, of course, is that every seventh year the land is left fallow. You can't plow, plant, or harvest. And the produce that grows by itself is ownerless. So the ownerless, the person who owns the field can't assert a claim, a property right over the produce. It's left for anyone to take. That's the halacha of Shemitah. That's every 7 years. Every 50th year, after going through 7 cycles of Shemitahs, we have a special year called the Yovel. It's every 50th year. And the Yovel, in addition to the rules of Shemitah applying, again, you can't plant, plow, harvest. The produce is ownerless, but there are additional laws. Basically 2 additional laws. First is that slaves go free. Jewish slaves, the Eved Ivri goes free. Now, an Eved Ivri doesn't work that long in any case. His maximum term of duty is 6 years. He can be sold for 6 years, and the 7th year he goes free. But if Yovel interrupts the 6 years, he goes free with Yovel. That's the first halacha. That in Yovel, people return to their families. And the second halacha is that land in Eretz Yisrael that was sold goes back to its original owner in Yovel. Now, when the Jews came into Eretz Yisrael, so Eretz Yisrael was divided among the members of the 12 tribes. Everybody received a portion in Eretz Yisrael. You're free to sell it. You can sell it if you want. But ultimately, the field returns back to its owner. Or as the Torah puts it, the person returns to his inheritance. It's an interesting thing, deserving of examination. How do we look at it? Do we look at it as a field coming back to its owner, or the owner going back to his field? I guess, in theory, if you're talking about real estate, since it's attached to the ground, it doesn't move. It's really the owner that moves. The owner returns to his field. That's how the Torah puts it. So those are the additional halachas of Yovel. We'll talk tonight a little bit about what the ideas behind Shemitah and Yovel are, but let's just point out that the opening verse of the parsha informs us that these are mitzvahs that were given to Moshe and Har Sinai, which means that we have a chronological problem. That these 2 parshas, Behar and Bechukatai, which were said at Har Sinai, actually predate the rest of the book of Vayikra. Because we know that originally God spoke to Moshe and Har Sinai. But once the Mishkan was built, God no longer instructed Moshe Rabbeinu to go up to the mountain. God would speak to Moshe in the Mishkan. So the first verse of Sefer Vayikra begins, Vayikra el Moshe, Vayidaber Hashem Elov Me'o Moed Lemor. That God called to Moshe and spoke to him from the sanctuary. So in other words, the book of Vayikra opens with the sanctuary already having been built, and God speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu there. So we're at the point in time that God no longer speaks to Moshe on Har Sinai. And yet the last 2 parshas, Behar and Bechukatai, it's clear from the Torah they were said at Har Sinai. Because the first verse of Parshas Behar tells us that God spoke to Moshe at Har Sinai, and the last verse of Bechukatai tells us that the aforementioned laws are the mitzvahs that were given by God to Moshe at Har Sinai. So we have bookends. The first and last verse of these concluding 2 parshas tell us that the scene is taking place at Har Sinai. So it comes out that these 2 parshas really, chronologically, were taught to Moshe Rabbeinu before the rest of Sefer Vayikra. And that's a very, very odd thing. Now it's true, Chazal tell us that the Torah is not in strict chronological order. But it is a little strange that we should have 2 parshas which chronologically were said before the beginning of Vayikra and instead are placed at the end of Vayikra. It's something that requires some reflection. We're not going to deal with that tonight. But we're going to deal with another issue. That why does the Torah make a point that Har Sinai was where the laws were given, specifically with regards to Shemitah and Yovel. Because all the mitzvahs are given in Har Sinai. It seems over here that these two mitzvahs specifically somehow are connected to Har Sinai, and the Torah sees it important to bring out the fact that these mitzvahs were given at Har Sinai. Rashi quotes the statement of Chazal, that from here we see that just like Shemitah and Yovel were given not only in generalities, but even their specifics, the details were given at Har Sinai, so by analogy it is true with the entire Torah. And the Ramban explains, where do we see that the Torah gave the generalities and the details of Shemitah at Har Sinai? So the Ramban points out that Parshas Behar is not the first place where we have the laws of Shemitah. If you go back to Parshas Mishpatim, there is a short verse, one single verse, that talks about Shemitah. And here we have an expansion of the discussion. So the reference in Mishpatim is the klal, that is the general law of Shemitah. The expansion over here is coming to fill in the detail. This is the prat. So we see with regards to Shemitah, the Torah tells us explicitly that even the details were given in Har Sinai. By analogy, we apply this to the entire Torah. Now, the truth is that that is correct. That the fact that the Torah elaborates on a mitzvah which was previously discussed in the book of Shmos does teach me, yes, that the klolim and the pratim, the generalities and the details are given in Har Sinai. But it still doesn't explain why Shemitah was chosen for that. Because God could have chosen any of the mitzvahs that were given in the book of Shmos, provided details, and we would have said by analogy that just like this mitzvah was given in a general sense and in a specific sense, so likewise all the mitzvahs we should assume are the same. There must be some deep connection between Shemitah and Yovel and Har Sinai. Forgive me for giving a lesson in political science tonight, but I find myself compelled to do it. As you may know, that one of the great conflicts in political thinking is the conflict between the ideal of equality and the ideal of liberty. The two are often in conflict. You know, equality may call for a system of distributive justice. But if you want to level the playing field, if you want there should be an equality of outcome, then that means you would have to redistribute the wealth in some pattern. Now, the pattern could be conceived in different ways. You might have a strict egalitarian pattern. Everybody should have exactly the same thing. Whatever society produces, it produces apples, it produces oranges, it produces bicycles. Everyone should have the same number of apples, and the same number of oranges, and the same number of bicycles. Now, of course, that will not maximize happiness, because let's say you have two people, one prefers apples, one prefers oranges. So probably everybody would be happier if one who likes apples would get all the apples, and one who likes the oranges would get all the oranges. But it's very difficult to take into account everyone's preference. So one way of creating equality is to give everyone an identical basket of goods. Again, the same number of apples, same number of oranges, the same number of bicycles, whatever the society produces. And this way everyone is even. Even Steven, there's a certain equality in the economic sense. Of course, there's another more serious problem, which is that not everyone's needs are the same. You know, some people, because of circumstances, may need more than others. So distributing everything equally does not necessarily address everyone's needs in an effective way. So, of course, you may decide that the pattern should be as Marx put it, that from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. In other words, the responsibilities, the burdens of production are imposed on people according to their abilities. So a person who's physically strong, who's very intelligent, is called upon to produce more. A person who is not as physically strong and not as intelligent is expected to produce less. In turn, the distribution is according to need. As a person who needs less will get less. A person who needs more will get more. Now, does that work in practice?
No.
Well, it does work in practice in one very, very common setting. Where does this work?
Kibbutz.
Not in the kibbutz.
Family.
In the family, right? In the family, that's how a family works. In a family, everyone produces according to their ability, and everyone receives according to their need. I think it would be safe to say that if you have a family of adult parents and young children, who produces? The parents. We don't expect that much of the children. So from each according to his ability. Who receives more?
Teenage daughters.
The children, especially daughters. Right? The children receive more because they have greater needs. So within the family it works. So if you're very idealistic, why don't you say, well, if it works in the family, why can't it work across a society? It doesn't work that way. Why doesn't it work that way? Because there's something that exists within the family which doesn't exist within the state as a whole, which is love. In other words, the members of a family love each other, and therefore they are willing to work hard to provide for others. In the state, it doesn't work that way. I'm willing to work hard to provide for myself. I'm not willing to work hard that some freeloader should be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor. So that really is where Marx probably went astray, as he figured that that pattern which exists within the family can be transplanted to the state as a whole, maybe the world as a whole. Now, that is the idea of equality, some type of pattern where everyone's needs are addressed equally. On the other hand, you have libertarians who believe that the supreme value of a state is that it protects individual rights, and everyone is meant to be free. And to be free means to be able to keep the fruits of your own labor. So if you speak to a libertarian political philosopher, he will tell you that the idea of distributive justice is tantamount to slavery. Because if you are going to work and have the state take your money to give to someone else, that means essentially you're a slave to the state. You're not free. You're only free to the extent you keep the fruits of your own labor. There's an aphorism that Robert Nozick, a famous, probably one of the two most famous political philosophers of the late 20th century, said, liberty disrupts patterns. In other words, if you have a system of distributive justice which apportions the goods of a society according to some pattern, people exercising their liberty will inevitably disrupt the pattern. So the illustration he gives is this. Imagine you have a society where all assets are distributed evenly. Everyone has the same amount of money. And people spend this money on food and on clothing and their needs and on entertainment. Let's say one of the entertainments in this society is professional basketball. People like to go to the basketball game. And let's say there's one outstanding basketball player. In his mashal, he used Bill Chamberlain as the mashal that dates it somewhat. Going back to the days when I followed sports. And Will says, listen, if you want to see me play, you have to pay a quarter. There'll be a pushka outside the arena. You'll put in a quarter to see me play. No one gets in without paying a quarter. So, okay, fine. So everyone gives a quarter happily because they all want to see him play. Greatest basketball player of his time. Now think about it for a second. Madison Square Garden seats 20,000 people. That means that if it's a sellout night, Wilt makes $5,000. If there are 40 home games a season, then he's made $200,000. That means by the time the season is over, he has $200,000 more than anybody else. Remember, it's a society where everything is distributed evenly to start, but ultimately, he'll end up with more. because everyone voluntarily paid a quarter to see him play over the course of a season. There were many people that paid, and he has that much money.
A lot of quarters.
Now, the truth is, no one is complaining. Everyone feels it was well worth it, and we enjoyed it, and it was worth paying a quarter to see him play. And yet, the result is that the pattern of equal distribution has been disrupted by people exercising their liberty. This is an amazing thing. Now, what if the state was to say, no, this is intolerable. We can't tolerate a situation where someone ends up with more money, and therefore this transaction is null and void. This cannot happen. People cannot pay their quarter to see Will Chamberlain play. Now, Will Chamberlain, it's certainly his prerogative to say, well, I'm not going to play. I'm only interested in playing if I'm going to receive my quarters. I'm not paying my quarters, I don't want to play. So in the name of equality, what has happened? We have deprived people of their right to see Wilt play. We've deprived Wilt of his right to play, all in the name of some ideal of equality. Now the truth is, this is a facetious illustration, but let's talk about something which is more relevant to us. Now, in the province of Ontario, the province has decided that the equal access to health care is an ideal. And equal access to health care does not mean to the Solons of Ontario that everyone should have access to a threshold level of health care, but it means everyone should have the exact same level of health care, which means that any service which OHIP will cover cannot be contracted for privately. And that means if I want to have a procedure done and I can afford to pay for it, I'm not allowed to pay for it. Why? Because we don't want, like, the greatest evil, which is the two-tiered health system. Now, to me, it would seem, if the province is willing to guarantee an adequate level of health care for everybody, why shouldn't people who have the money be free to pay for something extra, or something more, something faster? No, that's not good enough. It has to be even. Everyone has to be the same. That means we don't want the millionaires to be better off than the paupers. Everyone has to be treated the same way, and that's the way it is ostensibly. I don't think that's the way it is practically, but ostensibly it's that way. It makes no difference. The only person in this province who gets preferential treatment is me, because here's my doctor, right, over here. So, I'm better off. But
Conrad Black.
Pardon?
And Conrad Black.
Also, why?
Well, he wrote an article about a week ago or so. Within one day, he was diagnosed. He saw the greatest experts in the city, and he was treated, and he was out of the hospital within one day.
And why was that? Why was that? He's a celebrity. He's a celebrity. Okay, but this is the question. So this is the tension between liberty and equality. And liberty tends to disrupt patterns. In my heart of hearts, I have to tell you I'm a libertarian. I find it a more satisfying political philosophy. But I have to tell you that the Torah has, at least in some areas, a very different view. The Chalukah of Eretz Yisrael, the division of Eretz Yisrael, initially is patterned. There's an equal division of the land in Eretz Yisrael. Now, there happens to be a dispute between Rashi and the Ramban exactly how it was done. And this is also a fascinating thing. The opinion of the Ramban is that Eretz Yisrael was divided into 12 equal portions, and one portion was given to each shevet, and then the members of each shevet, each tribe, divided the land equally among themselves. Now that means this: if you had a shevet with a larger population, by comparison to a shevet with a smaller population, the shevet with the larger population, each member got a smaller portion, because Eretz Yisrael was divided into 12 equal portions, so that 1/12 of Eretz Yisrael was divided among the 70,000 members of Yehuda and among the 30,000 members of, let's say, Reuven. So a member of Reuven had a larger portion than a member of Yehuda. But each shevet was equal. Rashi's opinion is different. Rashi's opinion is that everybody got an equal portion, and the tribal portions were not equal. In other words, Shevet Yehuda covered more territory than Shevet Reuven because it had that many more members. Now, this, by the way, is a fascinating question. The question is that if you believe in equality, what does equality mean? Does equality mean equality of individuals or equality of groups? Let's give an example. And again, this is something which is relevant to political thought. Let's say, for example, you have a society which is comprised of two ethnic groups. Let's say you have a society comprised of blacks and whites, two racial groups. And let's say the society is 70% white and 30% black. Well, it could be that the whites have certain group interests and the blacks have different group interests. If you say everyone should be equal, well, what do you mean? Do you mean equal as individuals? Well, if everyone is equal as an individual, if every individual is given an equal amount of money, basket of goods, etc., the white group will be stronger than the black group, simply because it's that much larger. On the other hand, if you say, well, we want equality of groups, then we'll want to divide things in such a way that the whites and blacks will have equal power, but that will mean that every individual black is better off than every individual white. And this is a very serious question. When you think about equality in a society, what are we talking about? Equality of individuals or equality of interest groups? Yes?
Well, how do they decide, though, which... also, some parts of Eretz Israel may be more fruitful and others would have more minerals.
Well, that was Al-Pi Garvel. It was random. It was a lottery. Right? But this is a very serious question, and it seems that Rashi and the Ramban are addressing this. It seems that each Shevet had a quality, a agenda of its own. So the question is, do you have equality of individuals, but that would mean that certain Shvatim will be stronger than others, or do you have a balance of group interests? A fascinating thing. But either way, whether you go like Rashi or like the Ramban, the division of Eretz Yisrael is pattern. But over time, liberty disrupts patterns, because the Torah says you can sell your portion. So there are probably some people that aren't interested in farming, and they would be glad to sell their portions. And there are some people that would want to form large plantations by aggregating smaller farms. And after a very short time, the whole nature of Eretz Yisrael is transformed. Whereas once upon a time it was a nation which was divided into very small family farms, now we probably have a massive percentage of the population which has been displaced from the land. They're living in the cities, engaged in occupations, and the production of food is controlled by the large plantation owners, where there are economies of scale, and so on and so forth, very much as has happened in the United States, where the family farm has virtually disappeared, and food is produced by agribusiness in these very, very large holdings of land. Yes?
Wasn't the scheme disrupted from the get-go?
Yeah.
Because the 2.5 tribes never took land within Eretz Yisrael. Well, what happened with that?
Well, that wouldn't be the same disruption, because basically they got land on the east side of the river, and it was divided in the same pattern.
But their so-called designated area within Eretz Yisrael.
Well, that means that the ones that crossed the Yarden got more. So this was the benefit of everybody.
It doesn't matter anyways, because once you get your land, you can each individual can develop with his own power, and therefore the equality breaks down anyhow.
It breaks down, right? It breaks down. So the point is, but the Torah says that every 50 years, everything reverts back to the original pattern. That means what the Torah is saying is that you are not free to disrupt the pattern. You can disrupt the pattern temporarily, but every 50 years things are set straight again. That's really what Yovel is. Because Yovel is the restoration of the original pattern of division. Now, it may be, in practice, that many of the small farmers that received their lands in Yovel just sold them back to the large plantation owner after Yovel. That's possible. But what the Torah is telling us is that I want this pattern of division. And therefore, even though over the course of the 50 years you have the freedom to disrupt the pattern, but every 50 years the pattern has to be restored. The pattern of the original division of Eretz Yisrael is restored, and everyone returns to his small family farm. That's what Yovel is all about. And that means that the Torah is placing a limit on freedom. You are not free to do with your land as you would want. You can't sell it permanently. You don't have that freedom. In other words, God wants a certain pattern, and that means you're deprived of your freedom. In other words, the corollary of freedom disrupting patterns is that if the state insists on a pattern division, it does so by taking away freedom. Right? The Torah takes away your freedom to sell your own land. It's your land, but you can't sell it permanently. You only sell it until Yovel. Yovel restores the pattern. But likewise, we talk about the Eved Ivri, the Jewish slave. Right? The Jewish slave is not a prisoner of war. The Jewish slave is a person who is sold as a consequence of his own choices. Now, there are two types of Hebrew slaves. One is called the Mocher Atzmo, the person who sells himself because of poverty. Right? He's poor, and he can't afford to support his family. So he has this idea, he'll sell himself as a slave, and the proceeds, he'll support his family. That's called the Mocher Atzmo, the person sells himself. Then there's the Machruhu Bezdin, a person who is sold by the court to make restitution for theft. Now that also is really a consequence of your own choice. Because if you choose to steal, you may find yourself in this situation that you're sold as a slave. Now the Torah says that your ability to make choices or to suffer the consequences of your own choices is also limited. Only until Yovel. Yovel comes, everything is set back to the way it was. That means you cannot sell yourself beyond Yovel, and to a certain extent, that the choice you make to steal will not affect you beyond Yovel.
What's Yovel? Sorry.
Every 50 years, that's the
50 years.
the year that everything is set straight. So really what the Torah is telling us is an amazing thing, is that as much as we cherish freedom, but this is God's world. This is God's world. And because it is God's world, there are limits that are placed on our freedom. And it's true, for 50 years we live under this illusion that we can sell our land, we can sell ourselves, and so on and so forth. Every 50 years we are reminded, this is not your world. This is God's world. There is a pattern, and God's insistence on the pattern, meaning that everybody be in his place and everyone holding their own family farm, means that at the expense of your own liberty, God's scheme will hold. It's an amazing, amazing thing. You know, we're used to it because we're familiar. We've read this again and again and again. Every year we read this parsha, so, oh yeah, the land goes back, the slaves go free. But the truth is, to people who are thinking in terms of freedom, you know, this is really astounding. This is astounding. That's why you need 7 Shemitas to prepare yourself for a Yovel. Now, Shemitah is an initiation into this lesson. It's the beginning of the reminder that we live in God's world. Notice here God says, in a negative sense, yes, it's your field. You don't have to give it to anybody else. You can still keep it. Whether it was originally your field or whether it's a field that you bought, you maintain possession of it, but your ability to use it is limited. You can't plow, you can't plant, you can't harvest. Right? That's a gentle reminder that it's God's earth. I mean, if it's really my land, why can't I do with it what I please? Why can't I plant, plow, harvest? Right? So God places limitations. No, every 7 years, you are limited to what you can do. But God, at that point, doesn't take it away from me. He doesn't make me give it back to somebody else. It's my field, just I'm limited as to how I can use it. So it's a hakdama, so to speak. It's an introduction to what Yovel comes to teach us. Yovel takes this lesson to a higher level. Yovel takes it to the level that not only am I limited as to how I use it, I may have to surrender it. I don't get to keep it. I have to give it back to its original owner. I have to let the slave go. I have to give the land back. I have to restore the pattern of God's scheme. You have 7 Yovel Shemitas. You go through the cycle of 7 Shemitas, then you're ready to understand what Yovel is. You can't just jump into a Yovel. As you learn the Shemitah lesson again and again and again 7 times, then you can finally fathom the idea that there's such a thing as Yovel, and that this is God's world. The truth is, this idea that we live in God's world is really the fundamental principle of Torah, the most basic principle of Torah. Because Torah is a great damper on our freedom. Because we want to be free, and yet the Torah tells us at every step, this is what you must do, and this is what you must say, and this is what you must think, and so on and so forth. So a person would say that I want to be free. I don't want to be encumbered by so many laws and so many burdens. Let me tell you an amazing thing. An amazing, amazing thing. I once heard this on a tape. You know, there's a famous rabbi, his name is Rabbi Bechukatai. He heads an organization called the NJAP, National Jewish Outreach Program. And he was, I think, still is affiliated with a synagogue in New York, called Lincoln Square Synagogue. And there he established a program, first of its kind, but it was copied many, many, many times over, which is called the Beginner's Minyan. This was a minyan for people that did not know much about what a synagogue service is meant to be. And in a very non-threatening environment, people will be welcomed and learn about prayer and so on and so forth. And he wanted to replicate this experience for people to model similar programs. The problem is it was always on Shabbos, so it couldn't be recorded. So he got his chevra together on a Sunday, and they simulated a Shabbos service. Obviously, it wasn't the real thing, because it was a Sunday. But the tape was widely distributed, and I went to listen to the tape. And he said something there which I thought was fascinating. I still can't get it out of my head. There was when it came to the Shema, so he pointed out, what is the Shema? Chazal say that when we say the Shema, Shema is Kabbalas Oil Malchus Shemayim. We accept the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. So we need to accept the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. And who wants a yoke? I have to tell you, I'm reminded again, I'm sure I've said the story before, we have a family friend who was teaching in a Talmud Torah in a religious school, and she was telling the class about the Shema, accepting the yoke of the kingdom of heaven, and all the kids are nodding, yes, 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 yes. And finally it dawns on her, maybe they don't know what a yoke is. So she says to them, says, you know what a yoke is? Of course I know what a yoke is. Says, what's a yoke? So the yolk is the yellow part of the egg. Is the yolk. So what is the yoke of the kingdom of heaven? What does that mean? The yoke of the kingdom of heaven. Now, the yoke is the harness that an ox wears on its neck. And you attach the wagon to it, the plow to it with ropes. And the ox can thereby pull the wagon or pull the plow. Now the question is, what does this mean that we should carry a yoke? That we should be like the ox that carries the yoke. So Rabbi said an amazing thing. He said like this. He says, what's the alternative to the yoke? What's the alternative to the yoke? If you didn't have a wooden yoke, what could you do? Well, you could take a rope and tie it around the ox's neck and tie the other end to the wagon. What would happen if the ox then walked one step forward? Be strangled. Right? It would choke. So what is the yoke? The yoke enables us to harness the power of the ox without strangling the ox at the same time. That's what the yoke accomplishes. It says, what is the yoke of the kingdom of heaven? somehow it enables us to harness our energy for the service of God without feeling strangled. How do we do that? And the answer is, when we come to the realization that Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, that God is the sole master of the world, when we see reality as it is, then we understand that this is the way things have to be. Why are we so often upset, angry, embittered, frustrated over the things that are? Because we've deluded ourselves into thinking that they can be different. Okay? Because if I come home and I don't like dinner, what's on the menu for dinner, so I'm upset because it could have been something else. It didn't have to be this. It didn't have to be this. So let's say, for example, I don't like dairy foods. I like meat. And I come home and my wife makes something dairy. So I'm upset. Why am I upset? Because it could have been meat. But let's say it's the 9 days between Rosh Chodesh Av and Tisha B'Av. I can't eat meat. So I come home. I'm not upset. Why? Because they understand this is the way it has to be. I'm going to get upset about it. There's no alternative. This is what it has to be. So we are upset because we convince ourselves it could be otherwise. It doesn't have to be this way. It could be otherwise. We live in a world that God tells us, do this, do this, do this, do this. He says, why does it have to be that way? Well, we have to listen, we have to have so many laws, so many restrictions. The answer is when we accept the fact that, yes, God is the king, God is the creator, we are beholden to him. Everything we have, we owe to him. There's no alternative. We can't escape the fact this is God's world. You know, as much as we would want it to be otherwise, that's the reality. This is his world. When we accept that, then we're not bitter. We have no grounds for complaint. This is just the way it is. You have to get used to that. And that is the Kabbalah's oil. The sooner we accept that, the sooner we can live in this world within that framework without feeling a sense of being strangled or being restricted. This is the way it has to be. In the same way that no one complains that we have to breathe. Never anybody complains. You know, you have to breathe. Every day, you have to breathe so many times. Dozens of times an hour. You have to breathe? Why? What for? Couldn't God have made the world in such a way you wouldn't have to breathe? So much easier? That's the way it is. Good question. Why God made it that way? I don't know the answer to that question. Why he made it that way? Maybe he could have made the world different. But this is the reality, and we don't find ourselves complaining about that type of thing because that's the way it is. We've accepted that yoke, and now we can harness our energies without feeling strangled by this restraint. We have to know this is God's world. That is what Shemitah and Yovel are all about. Shemitah and Yovel are the reminders we are living in God's world. As much as we want to be free, God tells us there is a certain pattern, there's a certain plan, and Atzas Hashem Yisokum, God's plan ultimately stands. And it may be for 50 years you can drift away, and you can modify, and you can change, and you can amend, and you think you get away with it, and every 50 years there's a Yovel. Nope. Back to square one. Back to God's original plan. And Shemitah prepares us for that. Shemitah gives us a forewarning of Yovel. Every 7 years, remember, there are limits. Just because it's your land, it is your land. Right? Don't make you give it away. But you can't plant, and you can't plow, and you can't harvest. There are limitations to its use. So that prepares us for the Yovel. The Yovel is the big bomb where we're told, give it back. Release the slave. Send the land back. It's not yours. This is God's world. Kili kol haaretz, the earth is mine. And I want it to be divided in a certain pattern, and therefore that pattern has to be restored every 50 years. That's what Yovel teaches us. But this is the foundation of Torah. This is why the mitzvahs of Shemitah and Yovel are intimately bound to Har Sinai, because they're intimately bound to the entire experience of Sinai, which is the essence of giving of the Torah. But there's another aspect to it also. The ability to practically observe Shemitah and Yovel requires a tremendous amount of faith in God. And especially living in an agricultural society, right? The Torah tells us that what will happen if you will say, wait a minute, if we're not going to plant, what are we going to eat? Nothing is going to grow during Shemitah, nothing will be harvested. What are we going to eat for that year? So the Torah says that if you shall ask that question, God says, I will provide a special blessing, and there will be a bounty in the 6th year that will last until the harvest of the produce planted in the 8th year. There's a special promise. This, I'll tell you an amazing thing.
This is for Shemitah.
For Shemitah. And Rashi says that for Yovel as well. Yovel is an even bigger promise because 2 years in a row you can't plant. So it's an amazing thing. Nowadays, when Shemitah comes, so there are organizations that raise money to subsidize the farmers who observe Shemitah. It's called Karen Shemitah, different organizations and so on and so forth. So the question is that it shouldn't be necessary. Doesn't the Torah tell us there's a special promise? There'll be a bounty in the 6th year that will tide us over until the 8th year. So why do we have to raise money to subsidize the farmers? That's a very serious question. You could say, But I once heard a rabbi who said very beautifully, the halacha is that Shemitah bizman hazeh, Shemitah nowadays, is only midrabanan. For various halachic reasons, it's only a rabbinic ordinance nowadays. So there's no divine promise. The divine promise is only when God commands us to observe Shemitah. But it's only a rabbinic ordinance, then you may have to raise money to subsidize the farmers. Interesting thing. But it requires a tremendous amount of faith. Tremendous amount of faith. To be able to leave one's land fallow and to sit back and say, I am not going to plant, I'm going to do the will of God, and it will tide me over. It's interesting. The Sifrei Chasidus, it says that parsha is a very funny parsha. It says that if you ask the question, if you're going to ask the question, then God says, I will provide a bounty in the 6th year. And what if you don't ask the question? The problem is not because you asked the question, the problem is because you didn't plant. So if we need a bounty in the 6th year, it's not because you asked the question. What if you're a man of faith and you didn't ask the question? So Sifrei Chasidus says like this, that if you don't ask the question, God won't provide the bounty. There'll be other ways that will tide you over. He may tide you over by giving you income from other sources. He may tide you over by making the produce especially filling and enriching. You can eat smaller amounts that will last you, enable it to last over the extra year. So it says, if you lack faith, then God says, no, I have to provide a bounty so that you should be able to live with peace of mind. But if you don't ask the question, if you take a half faith, then God says that there are other ways to satisfy the need and answer the question, solve the problem. But in any case, it requires tremendous, tremendous faith. The Medrash brings a verse that speaks about Giborei Kayach, people who were mighty, Osei Devaro, who did the will of God, Lishmaya B'Kol Devaro, to listen to the voice of His command. And the Medrash says that who are these Giborei Kayach? Who are these mighty, valiant people? These are the Shomrei Shvius. These are people who observe Shemitah. Because again, to cut off one source of income is a very, very, very frightening thing. There are people that have had to do this. Sometimes a person becomes a Baal Tshuva, for example, and he finds that he can't keep his old job. Because his old job may have involved working on Shabbos, it may have involved other things, maybe the work itself is a violation of halacha. And he comes to a realization that he's just going to have to quit. And where is he going to go? What is he going to do? And hopefully it works out. But certainly at the point that he has to make the decision, it has not yet worked out. That's a tremendous gevur, tremendous strength to make that type of commitment, have that type of faith. But for the Shomrei Shvius, the people who observe Shemitah, it was always that way. The Medrash also says that there's another group of people to whom this verse applies. The Medrash says it applies to the Jews who stood at Har Sinai. When the Jews stood at Har Sinai, and God offered them the Torah, and they said, Kol asher dibar Hashem nasa v'nishma. All that God asks of us, we will do, we commit ourselves to doing, and only then will we delve into it, try to understand it. But our commitment to do comes first. This is also a demonstration of that same strength, that same gevura of Giborei Kayach, Osei Dvar, who do the will of God, L'shmo B'kol Dvaro, to listen to the voice of God's command. That's the connection of Shemitah to Har Sinai. Shemitah and Yovel, which requires so much faith, really is the paradigm for every person who accepts Torah. Accepting Torah is ultimately a leap of faith. It's a leap of faith. First of all, how do I know that I will have the ability to live up to these commitments? Torah is not easy. And how do I know that if I live up to these commitments, I'll be able to survive as a human being? Maybe my livelihood will be sacrificed. Maybe my family life will be sacrificed. Maybe I'll suffer in a myriad of ways. It's a tremendous, tremendous act of faith to make that type of commitment to observance of Torah. And therefore, it's exactly analogous to Shemitah and Yovel. That's the connection of Shemitah and Yovel to Har Sinai. Shemitah and Yovel really are paradigms for the entire experience of the Jewish people at Har Sinai. I think it's noteworthy that the Torah was given in a desert. The Medrash Rabbah makes a point of this in the beginning of next week's Parsha, Parshas Bamidbar, that Torah was given in the desert. It makes this point in connection to Parshas Bamidbar, which speaks about the desert. It says, why was it given in the desert? Because in the desert you have to live on faith. Because in a settled habitat, you can live by agriculture, you can live by trade. Now, there are ways of running a livelihood. If you're in the middle of the Sinai desert, you are utterly reliant on God. And that was the case for the Jewish people. They could not have survived naturally. They were given the mun, they were given the miraculous spring of water. They were sustained by God's bounty and protected by His clouds of glory. It was an existence where they were totally reliant on the Ribono Shel Olam. That's why Torah was given there. This Torah, maybe not to the same extent, but to a great extent, also requires that level of faith. It requires a level of commitment, of taking a leap, plunging oneself into uncertain areas, and having confidence that God will not let us down. Which does not mean, by the way, that God will give us exactly what we want. Doesn't mean that. In other words, if faith meant that, it would be very, very, very difficult to maintain that faith. I don't think anyone has that experience where whatever it is you need, or you think you need, you get. But what it means is that God will give you whatever He believes you need to fulfill your purpose in life. If your purpose in life is to serve God with bounty, you'll be given bounty. If your purpose in life is to serve God in poverty, you'll have just enough to survive. But you will have what you need to fulfill your purpose in this world. The problem is, if I think my purpose in this world is to serve God in wealth, and God has a different opinion, there it could be problematic, right? But God will never come to me and say that, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And you'll say, you didn't give me the means for that. That'll never happen. Because God will never make a demand of you that you could not have met. Whatever demands He makes of you will only be demands for which He provided you the need. And that's a leap of faith.